Hi everyone, welcome to Extra Credit, and today we're going to be talking about this really big historical question: how do we know about things that happened in the past? Now, I know that the way you guys know about things is you just go check your MSN Messenger conversation history, but there are actually a lot more ways that we can learn about what MSN isn't a thing anymore. Okay, so apparently you guys don't know what MSN is because you're all using this new website called Facebook or something like that. But actually, there's other ways to know. Wait, they don't use Facebook either? Okay, so apparently you guys don't use Facebook either because you're all using cool things called apps like InstaSnap and Chatgram and other social media things that help. But those aren't things. Okay, I don't know what you guys do, but it's something with your phones. Okay, so today's topic is a really big deal because before we dive into looking at actual historical events, we first need to know, how do we know anything about what actually happened in the past in the first place? Now, that may seem like kind of an obvious question, but it's actually a lot more complicated than you might think. For example, if I tell you that Julius Caesar was stabbed to death in the Roman Senate on March 15th, 44 BC, you guys are all going to believe me because, hey, I'm the history teacher, right? But I mean, how do I actually know? Because it's not like I was there, right? Or was I? So to prove that I'm not just making stuff up, we're going to talk about the top 3 ways that you guys can know about things that have happened in history. Now, I should point out that these are all primary sources. A primary source basically means a source that was created at the time of the event you're studying. These are not to be confused with secondary sources, which come from after the time that you're studying. So for example, your social studies textbook is a secondary source, or cheesy, rip-off, John Green style YouTube videos would be a secondary source for learning about history. Now, secondary sources have a whole really interesting set of issues associated with them, but we're not going to discuss those today at all, because here at Extra Credit, we like to follow the KISS principle. Keep it simple. Saruman. Because you kind of went a little overboard on the whole renovate the evil fortress thing. So without further ado, here are the major pros and cons of 3 types of primary sources. Your first type is people. Let's say you're doing a research project on World War II and you want to find out what life was like at home during the war. Well, maybe your great-grandmother lived through the war, so if you interview her, she would be a primary source of information for you. Or let's say you're doing a research project on the history of huge nerds with no life. You could try to talk to somebody who, as a teenager, spent 64 hours of their life in movie theaters watching Lord of the Rings. Not that I have any idea who might have done anything like that. But when it comes to people, the biggest pro here is that you get the information straight from the horse's mouth, so to speak, particularly if you're interviewing a horse. But that means that it's usually pretty good quality and often can be reliable information. Historians need this kind of information from people who were actually there at the time of events to really reconstruct those events in detail and find out what those things meant to the people who lived through them. However, the biggest con is that you have to talk with a real live person, and yeah. But seriously, the biggest con is that people's memories are often inaccurate, incomplete, highly selective, or at times, downright dishonest. Kind of like when Lucius Malfoy was like, "It was the Imperius Curse, I promise." What a phony. But what makes this even trickier is that even when someone's not trying to be dishonest, we all have personal bias. That means we see events a certain way, and we tell them from our own viewpoint, which is not the only one that there is. I mean, this is why people get into fistfights about Donald Trump, for example. It's not that one person is right and the other person is wrong. They each have their own perspective and bias that causes them to see things differently. And they also both have fists. Now, one other detail to point out, if you're going to use a person as a primary source for history, technically the person needs to be not dead. So you can't exactly go super far back in time with this one. The second type of primary source is an artifact. An artifact just means any physical thing left over from the past, like a road or a building or a pot. Artifacts are usually found by archaeologists, which is a Greek word meaning a guy who gets way too excited about pots. Now, one of the pros about artifacts is that they may be super boring sometimes, but at least they're not trying to deceive you. I mean, roads, pots, buildings, they don't lie. Well, except for Rhodes. I mean, Rhodes are lying all the time. The con, though, is that artifacts generally don't come with any kind of guide for how to interpret them, meaning that when you look at an artifact from the past, it's really up to your best guesswork as to what it means, what it was for, and why there's this random lady popping out of this guy's head. P.S. This is why the Egyptians are awesome, because they were kind enough to label their artifacts for us. Like, here lies Imhotep, or may the rays of Harakti Ra bless you, or I totally bet Pharaoh's not even reading this right now. LOL, Purple Monkey Dishwasher. And that brings us to the third type of primary source, and my personal favorite, texts. Texts can include things like books, pictures, videos, behind-the-scenes documentaries from the Lord of the Rings extended DVDs. And one of the great pros about texts is that they tell us why events happened in the past. And that's crucial for our understanding of history. In fact, the very first history book ever written was written by a Greek guy named Herodotus, who wanted to know why the Persian Empire invaded Greece in the 5th century BC. The fact that he was the first person that we know of to undertake a serious, in-depth historical inquiry makes him the so-called father of history. That, or he just named his kid History and was like, haha, funny joke. Now, text sources also have some pretty major cons, though. For example, they can be totally unreliable because the author can be highly biased and just want you to see things from their point of view. Or perhaps the author just was crazy and had no idea what they were talking about. Or the author is Margaret Atwood, and you're literally going to die of boredom by page 5. As an example, in his book, Herodotus claims that when Xerxes invaded Greece in 480 BC, he brought an army of 2 million men with him. Now, most historians are like, whoa, time out, Herodotus, big time red flag here. Do you actually know what an army of 2 million men would require? I mean, an army like that, if it's on the road for 6 months, let's say the average person goes to the bathroom, well, just wait. Okay, so Google tells me that the average person goes to the bathroom about 4 times a day. Let's say each of those soldiers needs to use the bathroom 4 times a day for 6 months. We're talking more than 2 billion bathroom breaks in that time. That's crazy. There aren't even that many trees between Persepolis and Athens. So due to this and some way less interesting reasons, most historians are like, yeah, we think that probably 200,000-ish is a much more reasonable estimate for the size of Xerxes' army. And that yields a number of only about 200 million bathroom breaks, which is exactly what my family needs on a road trip from Winnipeg to Regina. So there you have it. Those are the top 3 ways that we know about the past. Now go grab your phone and Insta-snap somebody about that and tell them what you learned today. Hey everyone, thanks again for watching. It was a lot of fun to make this episode, and hopefully more will be coming, but I can't guarantee if that'll be soon or not. Your challenge for this week is to figure out what exactly is this woman doing popping out of this guy's head. Your feedback and your comments are always appreciated, so make sure to leave some below. Subscribe if you haven't, and thanks again for watching. We will see you all next time.